Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio. Ours is a place where dreams take flight, voices are heard, and stories are shared. This is where cultures meet, connections are formed, and ideas are transformed into action. This is your destination for authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations. We're where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover our world of education, entertainment, hope, and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our USA Global TV channel and download our USA Global TV app. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. With heartfelt thanks to our executive producer, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, music scored by Yifei Tang from Cloud Road Music, creative direction by Paul Garcia, and I'm Al Cini, and I'm very proud to be part of the USA Global TV and Radio family. So join us here at USA Global TV and Radio. Make us your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication, or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited. Thank you for being a part of our global community. Let's inspire together.
Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and this is USA Global TV and Radio. Today, you're watching my show, What You Were Never Taught in School. And we're going to be talking about a topic that many people find uncomfortable, but yet find themselves experiencing. Why you feel fake sometimes and what it really means. So today, what I'm really addressing is what we rarely say out loud, but it's that feeling of being fake. And it's not fake in a dishonest way, but it's something that feels a little bit off. You're showing up, you're doing what you're supposed to do, but there's a disconnect between who you are and how you're operating. So I want to begin by reframing the idea of feeling fake. It's something that most people feel is a confidence issue, and it really isn't. It's actually an awareness issue. It's a signal that something is not sitting right, and your intuition is gearing you up and saying, hey, it's waving a flag going, guess what? Something feels off here. But yet we blame it on a myriad of things. And typically we blame it on ourselves. There's something about us that's not enough. And with that kind of mindset, it breeds more insecurity. And so what I'd like you to think about is, for many people, and I'm going to include myself in this starts early. We go to school, we're taught how to behave, we're taught how to respond, we're taught what's acceptable and what isn't. At some point, we go from having that childlike curiosity and wonder to being told, you shouldn't have done that. You're going to have to sit in the corner, go to your room. There's a timeout. We're going to take this away from you. You're getting punished, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And so over time, those behaviors that are learned behaviors, they become automatic. Without even realizing it, we're kind of like, oh, okay, I did something wrong. I'm going to get punished for this. And we start performing roles instead of making what I feel are conscious choices. So this is how performance shows up in everyday life. In conversations, what it looks like is we're saying something that we think someone wants to hear because we don't actually feel comfortable telling them the truth or giving them our perspective or our opinion. In business, it looks like we're showing up with a certain version of ourselves that aligns with the other person's expectations as opposed to our real perspective. And something that really stands out for me on this one is I've met people in business over the years, and they present themselves as one way. They look one way, they sound one way, and then you see them in a completely different setting. You run into them somewhere, you see them in a personal setting, and they're completely different. And I'll give an example of this. Back in the old days, whenever they were, as I'll be 63 in a couple of days, I went to a counselor. And it was a therapist. And I went to a therapist because I was married and it wasn't working out. And so I went week after week talking to this person. And then I happened to see this person in a store, and it was just the person and me. And I was like, oh my gosh, hi. And they acted like they didn't even know me. Their face just went completely white, eyeballs flew open, and just walked away. And so when I had my next appointment, I said to this person, I said, what happened when I saw you at the store? And he said, well, I didn't know how to react. And I said, well, why did you have to think about it? And he said, well, I'm so used to being in a therapist role. And then I saw you outside of that. And he said, and I didn't know what I was supposed to do. And I said, well, why wouldn't you just be your authentic self? And he started giving explanations. And I thought, oh my gosh, I'm actually being the therapist now. So I stopped going to him and I realized, you know what? I don't need any more therapy. But he was behaving in a completely different way than he was because he felt like he had a role to play. But as business people, before we're a business person, we're still a human being. And before you're a partner to someone, before you're a family member, whatever roles, whatever labels we give ourselves, we're still a human being. So why do we have different versions of ourselves? Why does it feel that we're putting on a role? Maybe we're giving an Academy winning performance and we're not a professional actor. I was going to say preferred actor. We're not a professional actor because we feel uncomfortable, because we've been trained to show up and act in certain ways. And so this is part of what this program is about, what you weren't taught in school. There's so many things that we have been taught. And by the way, when I went to high school was a very long time ago. But since then, I've gone to graduate school. I've got my doctorate. I'm an warden. And I only mention that because I want to stay relevant with what is actually going on in the world of education. And so for some people, they don't have the opportunity to get advanced degrees. And that's totally fine. But we do have what I like to refer to as common sense. And I had another episode about common sense. So if you haven't seen it, you can go over to our YouTube channels. But it's about that feeling of knowing who you are and then playing a role to appease someone else. So if you look a certain way, if you can act a certain way, then maybe you'll get someone to like you. Maybe you'll get someone to do business with you. But that can only be sustainable for so long. And I just gave that example, that my own personal experience with someone, and they didn't know how to act in an environment other than their business environment. So they lost my business as a result of that because they weren't being authentic. So being authentic really matters. When you are putting on this fake persona, that can become completely exhausting. I imagine it would almost be like living two lives. You're one way at home and you're another way outside of the home. And it can be exhausting, overwhelming. You can start to question yourself. You start getting in arguments with people. You really feel disconnected, even if you look successful on the surface. And of course, there's so many examples in television, for example, in Hollywood. There's been some recent situations, which I'm not going to go into, but we've got one person that we see who's in movies, who's extremely successful, and then we see the person in their personal environment beating up on someone in the neighborhood. And I have no judgment about it. It's just a big disconnect. So the point is, who is the real person? And probably it's both. But the person is showing up in their work environment in a certain way because they're getting paid, they have a reputation, they're representing brands, and yet in their personal life, they're showing up as they really are. But if they showed up that way in business, they probably wouldn't get the work. And now that they've shown up that way in their personal lives, it probably will affect their business. So professionalism is really about respect, clarity, and accountability. It's really owning who you are and being comfortable with it. And I've mentioned this before, not everyone has to like us. Not everyone has to want to do business with us. Not everyone has to be our friend. It's a matter of what is the value we are bringing. So by you watching this TV show, hopefully you're going to take something of value away. Hopefully you've come here before and you've come back, or you'll come back again, because otherwise, what would be the point? So when we look at ourselves, when we look in the mirror, we take a good hard look. Are we showing up as who we really are? Someone who knows you really well, if they saw you in a different environment, would they be completely shocked? We've seen so many different features on crimes, horrendous crimes that people have committed. And then they started interviewing the neighbors and the family. I didn't know Johnny was like that. He never showed signs of that, because Johnny was putting on an act. Johnny put on a face. Johnny showed the world who Johnny was. But yet, Johnny was totally different, because Johnny was capable of committing some horrendous crimes. Now, when we take that into the majority of people in the day to day, our ability to show up in an altered state to make other people happy, is that a judgment? Does that mean we're bad? Does that mean that we have to change? No, we have no judgment. I'm completely about not judging other people. It's just about looking in the mirror and seeing what is truly there. Do we feel comfortable with how we're showing up, or are we playing a role? And is the role to make somebody happy? Maybe the person isn't even here anymore. Maybe you are working diligently to make your parents proud of you and they passed away, or someone in your life who didn't think you'd ever be anything. So you want to show up in a certain way. And another example of this, I have seen stories, I've interviewed people who have survived domestic violence. And when you were to meet their partner, you would never know in a million years. The person is professional, they're successful, and yet they go home and they're a completely different person. And so if you didn't see them in their home environment, you would never specifically know. But if you take the time, there are always little red flags. If you get somebody agitated about something, how do they show up? Do they start threatening you? Do they start trying to brainwash you? Do they start trying to make you feel any way that's uncomfortable, so that you then step back from them because you give them the power? That is being fake. Being realistic is you're able to sit and have a conversation and say, this is how I'm feeling, and you can say how you're feeling, and people are being real. We're showing up as to who we really are. So maybe you know someone in your life who is being fake. Maybe you are being fake. And again, there's no judgment. And maybe you feel the term fake is a little too much. That's a judgment also. It's about finding peace. If you know anything about me, I am all about all of us finding inner peace. But to find peace, we have to be true to ourselves. We have to be realistic. When I first started in television, I remember I had a co-host, and he's still on our team, and he would say, why are you speaking in that way? I was like, hello and welcome to USA Global TV. He's like, why are you talking that way? That's not the way you speak. And I said, well, I don't know. I figured if I'm on television, I should speak a certain way. And he said, no, you should be yourself, because people will either like you for who you are, they'll find value in what you're saying, or they won't. But if you keep showing up with this fake voice, at some point you may forget about it. And then all of a sudden people will be like, well, wait a minute, who is she? And we've seen this with influencers on TikTok and Instagram. I just read a recent story about someone who was using a filter when they were doing their promos, doing their videos, and then they forgot that the filter wasn't on, and people were like, whoa, what happened? And they realized that there was a person who was being fake. And so even though that person was able to get away with it for as long as they were, meaning that no one called them out on it, they basically showed the world, well, I don't feel comfortable with who I am, so I have to use a filter so that you'll like me or that you'll follow me. And so I'm always very leery when people will tell me, oh, well, so and so's an influencer and they're interested in coming on to our channel. And I say to myself, you know what? First of all, are they really who they say they are? Are they really bringing value? And are those followers really authentic, or did they pay for them? And again, no judgment, but it's about being true to who you are. So, I've talked a little bit about the disconnection, about putting on a performance and how that can be exhausting. If you think about any well trained actor, if you've read anything about Hollywood, A-list celebrities, and they transform themselves for a certain role. Maybe they have to lose weight, or they have to gain weight, or they have to do a take over and over and over again. If you read interviews or you've interviewed them yourself, you know that they say it's exhausting. They are completely and totally exhausted. So there really is a difference. In that case, we're talking about professional actors who are being paid to do something, which is why I personally really like to watch reality TV. Because with reality TV, they're being followed all the time by cameras. And I'm sure they get used to it and they forget the cameras are there, but we see who we're dealing with. And so if you've watched any of the Housewives reality TV shows, you can see what's going on. We see disrespect, and I'm not saying all of them. I'm saying some of the episodes I've watched, we see people getting obsessively drunk, screaming and yelling and cursing, throwing things. That's them being real. Now, are they being paid to be dramatic? Yes, they probably are. They probably are. So who can really say what's actually how they behave at home? But if you are not prone to doing those things, you probably would not accept money to do it. So think about how you are showing up on a regular basis. Are you taking money for your career, your job to be a certain way, and then going home and you're being a different way? One of the things that I want to point out is that feeling fake is not necessarily a problem, but it's information. It's an internal signal that something needs our attention. So, I've given you a few examples of how people can perform even when it no longer serves them. And what I want to just reiterate is one of them is the conditioning. Okay, we as humans have been rewarded for behaving a certain way. So, we continue that behavior without questioning it. When I was growing up, we had this big poster board on the refrigerator, and there were all of these chores that we had to do, my sister and we would check them off and we would get $1 at the end of the week. And so I realized that do this, get that. And that's the same mentality that I took into my corporate career, which kind of led me very naturally to sell reward and recognition programs for 20 some years. That if we demonstrate a certain behavior and we complete it, we will get the gold star at the end. So that can be part of your personality, and that's normal. That's terrific. But if you are doing things, if you are behaving in a certain way that is not innate to who you are, and you feel that discomfort, you go to sleep at night thinking, like, I don't know how much longer I can carry on. Maybe you're in a relationship and it's not working. But the thought of breaking up the relationship, maybe leaving your partner, leaving your family, is so overwhelming that you decide to play a role. And the role is maybe dutiful spouse. The role is, I'm just going to look the other way. The role is, you know what? We will have an arrangement. We have an agreement. But yet inside, you can't stand it. Eventually, it's going to show up. Eventually, one day, you will be listening to your body, or you will just explode. You will absolutely lose it. And maybe you know people like this, or have been in situations where you feel that somebody that you're working with, someone you're friends with, they're very calm. They seem to have an answer for everything. They seem to get a lot of things done. They're very productive. And then something doesn't go their way, and it really matters, and they lose it. They become a ticking time bomb. They start screaming and yelling and throwing things. Or maybe they go completely dark. They don't communicate anymore. There are extremes, but it's because they were playing a role. and they can't keep the role up anymore. If you are a professional actor, and I am not a professional actor, but I am a television host, I can tell you by the end of the week, by Friday, I am exhausted because I am here giving information under bright lights. I am standing. So I need a break. And the same thing happens with actors. They do their movie and then they take a break. They do their TV show, then they take a break. In real life, it's the same way. If you're being who you are on a regular basis, then you don't need a break because you're being true to yourself. But if you are personally in situations where you're playing a role because you want to keep the peace, you want to get ahead, whatever it might be, eventually it's going to take a toll. So you will erupt in one way or another. And again, there can be extremes. It can be where you become violent, which is a major extreme, or it could be where you just are screaming and yelling and cursing. That's another example. Or it could be that you decide you're not going to communicate at all. There's anywhere in between as well. The next thing is fear. If someone has built a relationship or a business based on a certain identity, then changing that identity can feel very risky. Bringing people in that are going to be exposed to what actually is going on, that can feel uncomfortable. And it's the same thing with personal relationships. So I have witnessed over time being in a situation, maybe at a restaurant or some type of entertainment situation, and I will be with another couple, and the whole time they're bickering. They're bickering, they're bickering, they're bickering. And maybe they're insulting one another. They're doing something that I feel uncomfortable with. And I'm thinking, why am I here? And then at some point, I say something and they realize, oh my gosh, we've just exposed our relationship to her. She now sees what it is. And so that fear factor in and of itself can cause the next step to be they no longer want to socialize because they have mastered this pattern of dysfunctional behavior. And to have someone else see it for what it is, it's upsetting because the fear is that someone who's exposed to this will speak to the two of them or one of them and say, hey, do you realize how much you're hurting each other? Do you realize how much you're hurting yourself? Do you realize that you're constantly bickering? And then somebody may have to make a decision. You know what? This relationship isn't working. You know what? I hear what this person's saying. I've had my blinders on. And that fear is enough to keep people away. The next thing is speed. People are constantly moving, producing, responding, and people are saying they're busy, which I've mentioned before is a 4-letter word to me. They don't actually pause long enough to see how their actions are aligned or they're not aligned. And maybe this is you I'm talking about, or maybe you know people like this. They're constantly so busy, not being productive, just keeping themselves mentally distant. And that can be somebody who is watching hour after hour after hour of television. If you are watching television because you want to get a quick update on what's going on in the world, or maybe you want to be educated on something, or maybe at the end of the day, you just want a little entertainment where you don't actually have to think. That's different than someone who has the television on 24/7 with the news, for example. The news is on, it's the end of the world, and the person hears this over and over and over again. They are putting themselves into that as their reality so they don't have to deal with their own reality. So by watching the news and being consumed with all the negativity, they then take that negativity out in the world instead of looking at their own world and doing something to clean that up or doing something to progress or to evolve. And so this can also be the result of taking on a fake persona. And what does that look like? that persona can be, this person's an expert when it comes to politics or when it comes to world affairs because they're watching the news constantly. When in truth, it's just someone who's hiding from their own life to be consumed with negativity so that they can then go out and spread the negativity. So these are all just examples, and I'd like you to just think of them in the context that they're given, because again, there's no judgment. So this is where something that I've created called elevated listening actually becomes critical. When we're able to listen without interruption, without immediately reacting, without trying to control the conversation, and without judgment, we start to notice patterns. I do this all the time. I will sit back and I will listen to what people are talking about. I might even be observing people's behavior. And it's very often that people are not actually hearing what the other person is saying because our mind is so entrenched with what it is that we want to share. And this is where the ego comes in. It's about being right. I must be right. I must be in control. I must let him know. I must let her know that I'm the one who has the answer. And I've seen this in family situations, in front of the children, where you're trying to portray one of you knows more than the other one. Oh, your mother, she's an idiot. She doesn't know. Oh, your father, he's never around. These types of passive aggressive behavior statements that are filled with judgment. And so a lot of what I'm talking about comes down to the fact that we're not actually listening to each other because we're not listening to ourselves. If we feel uncomfortable because we're playing a role of how we're supposed to show up, well, if we're not even listening to our intuition, which is like waving red flags and a white flag, come save me, then how can we possibly be completely engaged to listening what someone else says? We are showing up by reacting, responding and performing, but we're not actually paying attention to what other people think or feel. So I'm going to be real because I need some water. So I'm going to take a quick break. Be right back.
Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? In a world quick to judge, one book dares to reveal the hidden cost of silence. Discover Holy but Harmful, The Silent Sin of Judgment, How Hidden Judgments Destroy Relationships and Damage Lives by Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. The Amazon #1 bestseller that's transforming the way we understand ourselves and the way we see others. Pick up the companion workbook to uncover your own hidden judgments and learn how to break free from them. Available now on Amazon and at fine bookstores worldwide.
Okay, I'm back. I survived the coughing attack. It's very difficult when you are here under all the lights, throat gets dry. So always have water around if you're presenting. Note to self. Okay, so I've discussed all kinds of environments about how we're not listening to ourselves and then we're not listening to others. I've also talked about social environments where certain behavior is seemingly expected. We're performing in a certain way. And this also relates to social media. In social media, how many times have we seen people portraying they have this unbelievable life? Everything is phenomenal. Everything is going well. And in reality, it's a different situation. So I never like to name names because I don't know if it's true or not, but we do know that there has been someone who's been in the news quite frequently who was supposed to be the center of a reality TV show and has been pictured in glamorous environments and all this hype about the upcoming show. And then we see something very different in terms of what actually was going on in this person's private life. And again, I'm not judge and jury. I don't know what the truth is. I've seen the videos, so I can only go by what I see. And again, who knows if that's even true because there's so much distortion with AI. But the point being, we have people who are in the eye of network television and they are in Hollywood, they are on all these major streaming platforms, and they're coming one way to us. And then some of them have a different background of what's actually going on. So what is the true person? Who is the true person? What is real and what is fake? Who knows? We're not here to judge. All we can do is look at ourselves. So I'm looking at myself and I'm asking you to look at yourself. Are you showing up as your authentic self, or are you putting on a performance? And you may think that your performance is world class, but the people around you may know that it's a performance. And even if they don't know you, there are telltale signs that people give away when they're not being true. The way they show up, the way they carry themselves. When you are operating under false pretenses, eventually people will find out. Some people find out right away because they're good at reading people, or they've had experience, or they've been through similar situations. So the call to action for each and every one of us is to feel comfortable in our own skin, to reward ourselves for showing up consistently in how we are and being authentic. And if something feels off, it probably is off. That doesn't mean that you have to get sucked into it. You can set a boundary. You can say, you know what, I choose not to engage. You know what, I've seen something today. I don't want to be a part of it. That doesn't mean that you have to try to right the wrongs, that you have to fix whatever you think is not working the way you think it should be. Just like with the examples I shared today from Hollywood, there's nothing that I'm going to do. I don't care enough to spend the time doing it. I'm just saying to you, for us to be aware in our own lives of what is going on, and to look at ourselves as being role models for others who are looking up to us. So you don't have to be a public figure for people to be looking up to you. But in your role in life, I'm sure there are people who are looking to you and are really applauding you for your journey. Will there be people who are not happy for you? Of course, but that's always part of life. So showing up how we are in our real life, in our real skin, it's like we could go and have complete makeovers. And again, nothing about people who do this. We all have the right to do what we want. But when we show up as our authentic self, then we feel a certain way in our body. And if we decide we're not going to be comfortable with how we are and we want to go and get plastic surgery or a number of things, maybe that's what makes us feel good about ourselves, but we're authentic about it. And so one of the A-list celebrities just came forward and she said that she had something done. And you know what? I really applaud her for that. I applaud her. By the way, she's probably a B-list celebrity, but I applaud her because she told us what's going on. So instead of people questioning, because she is out in the public domain, did she have this done? She just said, you know what, this is what I had done. She's comfortable with it. And so there's no reason for anyone to question it because it's none of our business. So I encourage you out there, whether you're watching live or on the replay, to take a pause and pause more often. Not everything that happens to us requires immediate action. If someone reaches out to you and says something that doesn't feel right, you're not comfortable with it, that doesn't mean that you immediately have to respond to them. You can sit with it. Because the way you respond and the manner in which you respond may not be who you truly are. It may be the emotional part that's just reacting. And yeah, you could say, well, if that's your emotions, that's true. But you can learn how to temper your emotions and how to engage when it makes sense, as opposed to just getting your blood pressure up or for ego purposes, trying to one up the person, or I'm going to let them know what I think. This is not about rejecting the structure that your life is in now or any expectations. It's about becoming aware of when you feel aligned with yourself and when you're out of alignment. It's one thing for Halloween that we put on a costume, but it's another thing with putting on a costume every day and not being comfortable with it. And that doesn't mean that you can't dress a certain way, that you can't express yourself. Absolutely. Just be true to who you are. And if you decide to try something with your appearance or with your behavior and it doesn't work, then maybe it wasn't meant to be. So I hope that what you're taking away from this is that feeling fake, it's not something to ignore. It's something to examine. It's something to take a look at and say, what isn't aligned in my life right now? Where am I feeling off? And it's not about blaming someone else. It's not about, oh, well, he always says this and she always says that. And one of my favorite comments is, oh, you made me feel this way. We can't make anyone feel anything. We can only feel what we feel ourselves. So that is pushing it off on the other person. We don't need to push anything off on anyone because we have everything we need. You, the viewer, have everything that you need right now to know if you feel in alignment. That doesn't mean that you understand where the alignment's off. That doesn't mean that you understand why you're showing up in a different way than who you authentically are, but you're aware of it. And awareness is the first step. So congratulations to you for that. And if you're working on it, good for you for even being interested in doing it. This has been today's episode of What You Were Never Taught in School. And if you would like to subscribe to our channels, we're on many different places, but I always send people to our YouTube channels, USA, Global TV and Radio, and Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, because YouTube gives us real information about who's watching, where they're watching, the kind of content that seems to be resonating. And if you'd like to be a guest on any of our shows, you can do so. Let me share that link. It's usaglobaltv.com/book your session. So here it is. You can follow us on Facebook at USA Global TV. And I already mentioned our YouTube channels, and you can also register to be a guest. We are in over 60 countries. We have shows in 3 different languages, and we would love to have you as a guest if you would like to share your story. Thank you again for listening. I will say goodbye for now, and our next show is coming up. In the meantime, we're going over to our sponsor, Tracy Cram-Perkins. Do you or anyone in your family have memory issues? Anybody have dementia or Alzheimer's? My mother did, and I took care of her for over 3 years. It's a very lonely journey as a caretaker. But again, there are some amazing things that come from it. And so Tracy's written a book, and she actually is a host of one of our TV shows here, Dementia Home Care Before, During, and After. Tracy's book helped me immeasurably. Tracy has really helped me. My mother has passed on, but I really value the support and guidance that Tracy gave me, and also what I learned from her book. So let's take a look at her book, Dementia Home Care Before, After, and During. USA Global TV and Radio proudly presents Tracy Cram-Perkins, a dementia caregiving survivor teaching how to balance care with peace of mind. #1 resource for dementia caregivers. It's the book, Dementia Home Care, How to Prepare Before, During, and After. Over 17,000 copies sold of this must-have guide. And now a testimonial from Tracy Smith.
If I was to describe this book to someone who is going through a similar situation, I would underscore how important it is to have some sort of a tool or a guidebook to help you through certain stages. And there's so many, it's such an unknown topic to the average person. And to have this as a reference is essential. It's going to help you get through it personally, as well as help your loved one manage.
To learn more, go to tracycramperkins.com. Tracy Cram-Perkins is an award-winning author. She's also the host of Dementia Home Care television show. Watch it here on USA Global TV and Radio.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA Global TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.